And now I would love to welcome Tryn to the stage to kick off this great discussion that we have planned today for you that is really going to dive into how we can be better caregivers for those more sensitive around us through some creativity and art and expression. So, Tryn, welcome. I'm delighted to have you here. And before we dive into this discussion, tell us a little bit about your background and what got you into this area.
Thank you, Steve. It's nice to be here. It's great to see we've got some guests. I can't wait for questions because I can talk away, but I can't wait to hear where people are needing some support. So I have a brother who had severe seizures since he was about 1.5 years old, and he passed ultimately of a seizure at age 9. And I mention that because that got all of my siblings into an awareness that a person is still there, even if you can't see it as easily on the outside. So my work has began with preschool age kids and kinder music classes. I got an elementary education degree and eventually moved into older people care because I felt like, I've always appreciated that a person has more to them than you can see on the outside sometimes, and loved the chance to start working with seniors after a period of working with the young folks. And it's just been a wonderful journey caring for people and just appreciating that people are trying to function at the highest level they can. So my work is very satisfying, delightful.
Yeah, and you said something that kind of, well, I'll dive down this rabbit hole because I think it's really important, especially when we're talking about dementia. But it's this whole, it's this whole, your brother with seizures. It's this whole concept of invisible disabilities is that, so often it's when we see somebody in a wheelchair, we automatically open the door or provide them with assistance. But things like hearing loss and dementia uh, and seizures or cognitive impairments of any type, we don't we don't see this, and we just see people behaving differently, and it's like, what do I do? Why don't you just behave differently or understand what I'm saying or hear what I'm saying in the case of hearing loss? Um, I think what you're going to talk about today really centers around some of these invisible disabilities.
Yes, and people want to be seen. And that's what I've appreciated about the work I've had the chance to do is to see people from their strengths. It's easy maybe to see them from a weakness or from a need, but if you can go all the way down into their spirits a little more, you'll really see who they are. And in my belief system, they'll always be that person, the full person, which is a wonderful lens for me, certainly, and brings out the best in them.
I love it. Well, you've written a book, 15 Minutes of Fame, and when you talk about is that what you mean? Is that the inspiration for that title? Is that we should all be seen and heard? We should all have we should have those 15 minutes of fame. Is that the origin of that title?
When I was writing my first book, and I've written two chapters in other books, which has been a delight as well. I was sitting at the mall actually, and I was having a cup of tea and I was writing and I was watching all these people going by, all ages, young and old, and silly and serious. And I just thought, everybody wants a moment to be understood, to be appreciated, and to shine. So I thought, I think that's going to be part of my title, 15 Minutes of Fame. And the other part of this concept about my book, and it's very much a working how-to kind of a book, is to create space for you as a caregiver to create 15 minutes of fame for your person every day. It doesn't feel like it's too much to ask to figure out if how can I be 100% for them, 5 minutes here, 5 minutes there, breakfast, lunch, and dinner, morning, noon, and night, however you break it up. And certainly
Well,
more is great, more attention. And we'll talk about how to do that, how to be present for the person with dementia in your life, because we all know there's plenty of frustration and hot, heavy lifting that caregivers are expected to do, but my work is to help make that load lighter and more joyful and more effective.
okay, I like that. And I like I think we can all devote 15 minutes, like whether yeah, I'm playing on your words there, but if that's not a heavy lift for any of us, but if we're focused, how special that would be. And I'm thinking about, like, many of us are familiar with the workplace and with employees, and you've got a boss, and if that boss, if whoever you're working for made you feel special and devoted 15 minutes of focused time to you in an 8-hour workday, that's going to radically change your demeanor and everything about that day and being there.
I love how you're bringing it to everybody because my website, caregiverheart.com, at the top says all about Alzheimer's and everybody else. We all need this kind of support and energy, just like you just mentioned. I
Yeah.
love that.
Okay, so I know you've got this mantra that you promote and live by and try to inspire and help others see the benefits of it. One photo, one song, one story. Let's tell us a little bit about this, and then maybe let's break it down. And if you can share some stories, that would be great too. And then, folks, if you've got a question or an insight or anything that Tryn says resonate, just drop it into comments, and we'll riff on it.
Beautiful. Yes. Well, when I did full caregiver work, which was for about a decade and a half, full-time caregiving, both in private homes as well as for a home care agency, and then in larger care homes with people with dementia in particular, I felt like, who are these folks? When I'm walking in here, we're thinking of them as heavily deficient and unable and grouchy and difficult and like, well, why am I loving these people? I love them because I know they have a whole lifetime of experiences. They have a whole lifetime of amazing stories. And I grew up really revering my older relatives. A lot of my relatives lived into their late 90s. And so it certainly was already a way that I could say, who is this person in front of me? And here's these 50 people at this care home or more. But each person has a story. And can I access that story in some way? I'm helping them, I'm supporting them, I'm either being an activities director or a full caregiver. How can I access that person's heart, that person's essence, because then if they feel seen and feel understood, they feel better. They respond to that. They see me coming and say, there's that person who understands who I am. And you wouldn't necessarily expect that with a person in deep dementia. You think, well, they don't even know my name. They don't know who I am. Actually, they do. They're very sensitive. And if you can imagine, if you had the flu, let's say you had the flu, you had a headache, you couldn't sort of see straight, your eyes get all blurry, and you're feeling crappy and you're asked to drive the bus for the day, or you're asked to give a seminar all day. Like you couldn't do it. You just couldn't do it. You would want to, but you couldn't. So I sort of see people with dementia in that with that set of difficulties on the outside in the physical world, but inside they're trying to get to us. They're trying to show who they are. And so my work revolved around finding that little piece of them, learning about them from the director of the care home or a family member or the nurse or a friend who comes to visit. Oh, tell me a story about this person's life so I can know who they really are. And then I would remember that story and tell them, that person, that story every day. Hey, you designed bathing suits. Hey, you were a clothing designer. Hey, you were a lawyer. Hey, all the things that you are, your essence, you're the person that wants to be full person, musician, you're an artist. They would respond immediately. Their eyes would sparkle. And this was years ago. Now I'm working currently in the field, and I just love doing my sessions of mindful art, which is music, stories, and art for people with dementia and their caregivers. So we'll talk more about that as well. But just seeing a person's real self, it makes all the difference. It brings out the best in them and transforms the moment from we're having a fuss and a struggle to, hey, we're having a authentic connection and we're connected. We're happy.
I love it. And the uh the the Cheryl says maybe I should take the quilt I'm doing to get my mom to want to interact with people in her nursing home. Would that be good?
Absolutely. I just did a class on quilting and oh, the stories. My goodness. One woman described this huge the form that they put the quilt on where people can work on every side of the quilt at the same time. I didn't know she would tell me that story. Another woman said, "We just found a quilt from 1892 in the bottom of a hope chest, and it's our family's quilt. And I made quilts for all my grandchildren." And I mean, the stories are endless and really beautiful, really special when you get that kind of beautiful handiwork. And I brought quilts with me. My aunt did a lot of beautiful quilting. She actually wrote books, and I bought the books. And people just tell all sorts of stories about that. And the feeling of the quilt, the textile, the text, what's the word I'm looking for? The tactile sensation of feeling a quilt. And, I would say, Cheryl, if you want to leave a different quilt, if you're concerned that it might get swooped away somewhere, bring her any quilt. Bring her
Yeah.
any quilt to feel and to remember, and even write a little story on her bedside that says, "This is quilts. You love making quilts for your grandchildren." Then it's something that everyone can interact with. The caregivers who walk in her room, or anybody can say, "Oh, she's a quilter." Yeah.
Yeah, but man, these are great ideas. Her mom used to make quilts all the time, but Cheryl, I know we all know what it can be like going to a nursing home, especially if our parent is not interacting and the and what I'm envisioning when you threw this out was working on your quilt at the nursing home. Like what I could see is like, hey mom, and I'm brainstorming now, folks, but hey mom, I thought we would go down the hall to the I talked to them. We can sit in the activities room and I can work on my quilt, and there's a TV there if you want to watch the TV instead of in your room. And now people are going to walk by, staff, residents, and they're going to see this unique activity, this quilt, and you can bring your mom into the conversation and it might trigger some things. I don't know if that's the direction you were going, Cheryl, but even if you just brought the quilt into her bedroom, I think that could make a real difference. No, this is great. We had we had somebody, you said something earlier, Tryn, about walking into the room of these folks that don't know my name or anything like that. And that can be some of the most disheartening, heartbreaking experiences for a loved one to walk into their parent or loved one's room and they don't even know their name. And we had a speaker on not too long ago who she said, look, just knowing somebody's name is the societal norm, okay? Like that we've been prescribed to use addressing people by their name. She said, if you were in their life, you are familiar to them. They recognize you. And I think that even goes for the caregiver that is in the room maybe 2 days out of the week. It's familiarity. And it could be familiarity of the person, but also the quilts, that could unlock a whole new set of conversations. Okay.
Absolutely. I love what you're saying that this other guest said, and what the way that I say it is, hey, you have a chance to become the new favorite daughter. Sometimes people say, well, the other one's more favoritized. Well, hey, I'm your favorite daughter, Marcy. Hey, hey. And then they have a little laugh, but you always can say, hey, I'm your daughter, Joni, and gosh, it is good to see you. I love you. Then it brings a context. Can you imagine, again, I used the flu example earlier. If you were in a country, if you had landed in a country with no luggage, no money, no identification, and it's happening, of course, in our world right now. It's very much a struggle. It's a real example. But can you imagine being sort of planted in a place where you have no context and no way to reach family, no way to reach people? You would be out of your depth. You would be struggling. You would be concerned. You'd be confused. You'd be distressed. You wouldn't maybe know what to do first. You might, at the age that we are, we might say, well, I'm just going to go to a cafe and have see if I can get a cup of water and just regroup. But a person with dementia who's in a care home, for instance, can be very much out of their depth and have no context for anything. So give them something to hold on to. Hey, I'm your daughter. I love you. It
Excuse me.
just creates a solid ground immediately. And that's part of my title of my book as well, bringing people both back to solid ground. Just create that ground every time you meet, every time you're together. And if your mom is a quilter, bring a quilt and the other specific thing I wanted to say about ways to connect with your family member, or if you're a professional or a family member, is to say, I remember this about you. You don't have to say, hey, mom, do you remember that you made quilts? You say, hey, I remember that you made quilts for all the grandchildren, and gosh, here's one of them. Let's look at this. Look at the dogs on the corner, and look at the cowboys over here, and the flowers. Whatever it is, you are the caregiver is informing the conversation, and they can then respond, and they will. I mean, miracles happen every single time I,
Love it.
and as a full-time caregiver, as well as now a more activities-oriented professional. But gosh, it's a joy. It's a joy to bring people back.
All right. Of course, we went down a few rabbit holes there. One photo, one song, one story. Let's go back to the regularly scheduled program here.
I love rabbit holes too. Well, I found that those aspects of conversation and connection really work. It's a one photo, one song, one story. Again, it's a place for people to start. As I wrote this book after many years of care, I realized it would be a simple way for people to enter into this strategy. It's creative strategies to bring life, to bring joy, and to transform the moment bring out the best in each other. So I'm a photographer, so I used photographs in my full-time activity work to show a beautiful sunset or a beautiful bowl of lemons in a blue bowl. I'm going to do a program this afternoon where I'm going to be talking about one of the five C's of Arizona. There's five C's: cattle, cotton, copper, citrus, and climate. We'll talk about citrus today. So I have pictures of oranges and limes. And anyway, that's just one small example of photographs that bring memories back, show people something. You know, those magazines that you'll see on the rack that say 100 places to go in the world that are the most beautiful places in the world. You may never get there, but if you have this magazine, you can open up the magazine and say, wow, look at these waterfalls in Brazil and look at the seven wonders of the world. You can actually travel there in your mind together with beautiful photographs. So photographs is a wonderful way to just bring a context to people. There's one particular story when I was moving into this work where I was doing a music program at a care home. And when I was leaving, there was a gentleman who had come to the program. He loved it. He said, "Thank you so much for the music." And then he pulled a photograph out of his pocket and he's I'm just starting to cry a little bit. He said, "This is a picture of my dad in the army playing the trombone." And he played the trombone for the folks there, and he loved doing that. It was one of his favorite things to do. And here's a man who's probably in his later 80s. He had this one photo of his father playing the trombone, and it brought him such joy. As I was leaving, I said, "Thank you so much for telling me that's a beautiful story." As I was leaving, I mentioned it to one of the caregivers, and she said, "Oh, yeah, he tells that story 20 times a day, every day." And I said, "Wow." So, what he's doing for himself, his family probably gave him the picture, or I don't know how he got it in his possession, but his family's helping him stay grounded. When he's lost and he's walking down the hall, he doesn't know where the bathroom is. He doesn't know if there's a meal. He doesn't know if he's going to see his family today or what's happening. He can reach in his pocket, pull out that picture, and he is there. He's himself. He knows his values. He knows what's important to him. He's transforming his own moments. I mean, this is what I saw. And that's why I continued to learn about people and how one photo can have such an impact.
And you know, I love it. Okay, and the other thing that I like about photos for those of us who like one common theme when I have dementia care thought leaders like yourself on is I walk away realizing we sort of have to behave like detectives. We're kind of out there trying different things, seeing where we light that spark and ignite a passion or purpose. And the great thing about photos is that it could be a magazine, it could be you know, like somebody that you don't know. That, let's say that you're a paid caregiver, just flipping through a magazine and commenting on the photos and seeing what jumps out. But for our loved ones, busting out the photo albums and going through them. And like you said, perhaps this family did something like that and discovered that, wow, the trumpet photo is the magic wand. Um, I'm glad you brought up trumpet because you say one photo, one song. And when you started talking about the trumpet, I was thinking about ways that we could take this to the next level. Actually bringing in a trumpet, just going uh, on yard sale websites. Uh, if this is in a care facility, the activities director, if they're outside the box and progressive, is find call the local high school and have a kid with the trumpet come and play there for the community.
You got it. You got it. And that's another way to stay connected to the real community. bring in that church choir who with the kids who want to be singing, or the dress rehearsal for their big concert at their school. You can't go to the concert, but they could come to you, and the dance recital that get the dancers in there. And the people in care homes just love it when community groups say, "Hey, can we come and do an hour of programming for you guys?" Yes, way. It's really a gift. It's a gift to them. It's a gift to everybody. So yes, photographs are just, yeah,
And
we can now take some of that detective work off of the plate of a caregiver who's saying, "Where's my father gone?" or "Where's my spouse?" I'm trying to help them remember who they are and stay grounded. Well, here you go. Find that one picture, and you can come up with, 50 if you want, but one is enough to bring that spark right back. There was just another quick story, a woman who had a picture on her wall. She was canoeing with her father. And I'm telling you, every morning for years, I would go in there and say, "Hey, you ready for your shower?" And we would giggle. She would walk past that picture. She'd say, "You know who that is? It's me and my dad." Real, oh, that is so great. Look at that great memory you have. And so again, she only had the two pictures on her wall. One was her for her, and one was her and her dad, whatever. It doesn't take a lot. You can do, you can be wild with it. You can put up gilded frames on the wall, or you can have one laminated picture at wallet size. It doesn't matter. The scale can be anything that you can do. And it could be a Xerox copy of a picture, and make 10 of them for every person in your family who goes in to visit them, and they have the same picture. And if that person's starting to get confused and disoriented, you say, "Well, there's this great picture I have of grandpa playing the trombone in the army." Oh, yeah, gives them a way to connect as well. So yeah, trying to
now,
take that
Yeah,
work off.
I love it. I love it. And we'll get into music here briefly, but going down another rabbit hole and with Cheryl's questions, this has been relatable, is uh you work in care and have worked in care homes, and so you're familiar with the stress of the staff and the caregivers. And one of the things that I know is that running an activities department in a traditional senior care home can be super challenging. You're trying to come up with entertainment that appeals to enough people to get into the hobby room or what have you. And and my idea here, playing on that trumpet story, is to just say to folks, it's like, look, you can go to the activities department and say, "Hey, Dad, really loves trumpet, and it would be great if you could get somebody in to play the trumpet or think about that." But the other thing that I know that communities love is when the families get involved. And so if you're hesitant about this, ask permission. It's like, "Hey, my dad loves trumpet playing. Would it be okay if I reached out to the high school marching band to see if a trumpet player would come in?" And what it also does is it enables you to take action. Is that oftentimes I talk to families who are very frustrated because this overworked staff is not customizing things to the needs of their loved one. And you can play a more active role, and it'll endear you to the staff too. It really will.
It will bring energy for everybody, exactly. And you can trust that the staff will say, "Yes, let's do 15 minutes of the instrument," or "Let's do a half an hour after dinner some night," or they'll figure out exactly where it fits, because the care homes workplace, they know what works for the people, but always inviting family to be participating. That is something else that I loved doing, is finding out the family member strengths, because often family members, again, we're talking about people who are placed in a care home already, um, they really want to bring their strengths too. They don't want to just come in and say, "Hey, how's my family member doing? Oh, they're struggling." That's a conversation that is tiring as well for everybody. So can we bring the family's strengths, bring their music, bring their stories, have them read poetry, have them do a tea and bring some fancy napkins and some fancy donuts and whatever, have them have the families bring their strengths as well.
I love it. All right. Let's talk. I mean, I know something that you're passionate about is music. So one song, it's like, let's talk a little bit about that.
There was a woman whose mother's name was Irene. So every evening when I would help her get to bed, she would say, well, and she would point to a picture of her mother. Often in a care home, you see at least, a small group of photos of some kind. She'd point to her picture of her mother and she'd say, her name was Irene. So we always sang, Irene, good night. Irene, good night. Good night, Irene. Good night, Irene. I'll see you in my dreams. So we would sing that song every night as she was going to bed. It never got old, never got tiring. It was a gift. And she is, this again, I'm going to say, there's a woman in her 80s still talking about her mother who passed when she was fairly young, actually. But there she was, remembering her best strength, remembering something that made her happy and made her feel calm and ready to go to sleep. So yeah, I've got dozens of stories about music. It's it's a really a way that people can connect and feel happy and feel their hearts coming back. Just the other day, we've been doing St. Patty's Day, of course, as our subjects, and I was singing "My Wild Irish Rose," and I sang the chorus. And what I heard in several different groups is somebody was singing harmony to the melody. And wow, what a gift. What a sweet thing that people's memories are there, their hearts are there, they're transformed from what's happening today to my wild Irish rose. And they're singing and they're laughing and they're telling stories about their visits to Ireland or that their parents were from Ireland. I mean, it just opens doors. It opens that memory. There's something, scientific about what happens in the brain when they hear a song that they know. And often I'm picking songs that everybody knows by heart. Usually I'm writing out lyrics for everybody because some people are tracking those lyrics and reading them. But mostly I'm picking songs like zippity doo dah, zippity yay, and everyone's singing every word. Even if they're new to the group, I just met some new people this week in the large groups. But gosh, it's transformative
I
music.
love it. Yeah, and as this is not meant to go down the infantilization rabbit hole at all, but we like what when you were singing, it was beautiful. I mean, you got a beautiful voice, and I'm thinking of like a lullaby. It's so comforting and welcoming and a great way for a child to fall asleep. But then stereotypical. We don't lullaby adults to bed, but why not? I mean, it's a comforting uh, feeling. It's an opportunity to somebody who loves to sing to be appreciated, and it's an opportunity for somebody who appreciates a good voice to hear some live music. It's no, the very, very interesting, and the songs do trigger memories. I mean, it's many of us can go back to a certain place with songs, and that's great.
It's
Okay.
remarkable. Yeah, we all have that song that we remembered singing in sixth grade with our friends on the bus or at the dances or just in the hallways. We used to play the radio all the time. I had a clock radio. It was the coolest thing in seventh grade. I'd turn on my clock radio and I would cassette tape. It had a cassette tape built into it. They're like, we want you to record the songs off the radio.
Yeah.
I recorded, what's his name? That great announcer, the top 40,
Dick Clark or Wolfman Jack
another
or
guy.
oh,
His name slipped out of my head, but he was Casey Kasem.
Casey
Casey
Kasem.
Kasem's
Okay.
top 40. I would just hit play and record it and record a whole. I still have those cassettes somewhere. I'm the kind of person who still has a record player and a cassette player, CD player, because streaming's awesome. But boy, having your own music that you really love, it's really nice
Mhm.
to just turn it on. Um, and also about music, it's nice to try any music. There's certainly wonderful groups out there you're trying to find the exact song that people love. And you just try some songs and see what hits, see what strikes them that day or that time. And you might come up then with a list of 10. There was a man who played piano and we left a list of songs on the piano so that when anyone was around him, he would kind of feel confused and grouchy. And then we'd say, hey, let's sit down at the piano here. And boom, he would just do, 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 do. He could play the whole thing by memory. But everybody needed a cue. And the cue was, here are the 10 top songs that he loves. And you
Mhm.
just say, let's just start this. Let's see. How about it had to be you. Do, 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 do. It had to be you. And he would play the whole song, smile, laugh, recenter, reconnect. It's just a miracle. And, I'm mentioning music, stories, art, poetry, dance. There's all these different domains for people and learning styles. So don't feel like, as a person out there, whether you're a professional or a family member, that you must do all of them. It's just try the different ones and see which ones work best for you as a caregiver, as well as what strikes that love and heart in that person.
And that's great. And Mary says, this is bringing back so many memories. Many years ago, I visited a retirement community to run a reminiscence group. I can still see the 80-ish woman demonstrating how to do hopscotch and the 90-ish man telling how he cried when they took away his dress. Obviously, he lived in a time when little boys wore dresses. So thanks for sharing that, Mary. And I'm glad that this is bringing up some memories for all of us. I agree. And just like Cheryl, I remember Casey and Dick Clark and the Midnight Special and when the Beatles hit America. And this is an interesting thing. I just saw a social media post yesterday that said reminding all of us not to uh not to dive into stereotypes when it comes to the residents that we're taking care of now in these care homes because the current generation that was at Woodstock, getting high and doing all that crazy stuff is now some of the residents that are in the care home. So it might be Jimi Hendrix instead of a big band that ignites a passion in somebody's heart.
Absolutely. It's fun for us musicians who like to play all the songs because I can play 100 years worth of repertoire, but getting to start to play the Beatles stuff and the 50s, the jazz and all the different styles. It's fun to see where people's eyes spark up. Yeah. Oh, yeah. There was a small care home I was working at last year, and it was mostly men. And they would just request stuff like, oh, we want some Grateful Dead. Okay. And I'd look up the lyrics and whatever they wanted, we would play. And they would just giggle and laugh and start telling stories. One guy knew the Grateful Dead. Anyway, it's you just opening up the memories for people when you start something. And as caregivers, we can start to feel like we're out of resources or we don't know what to do or we're just trying to get them to the kitchen. But then if there's something in the kitchen that's fun, like a magazine with photos or a songbook or some poetry, even books that they've written or books that they loved, and you have a 5-minute you read that book aloud while you're having some breakfast. It just bring some more grounding. It's not just focused on the tasks. And that's another sort of way that I describe what I do, which is help bring strategies that create an authentic connection and then make your daily tasks more easy, more flowing, because it's part of a context of a full life rather than a we got to eat, we got to, like when I did full care for people in care homes, I never said, hey, it's time to get up. It's time to take a shower. Who wants to hear that? Nobody wants to hear that. But I would go in and say, hey, there's a great breakfast that's being made right down the hall for a whole group of folks, and you're invited, and I'm here to make sure you're ready. And they'd be like, bing, out of bed. Let's get a shower. Let's go. Let's get dressed. There's somewhere to go, something normal, something that everyone wants. Everyone can't wait. Most people can't wait to have a breakfast date or have an adventure. There's a musician coming today. Let's get ready. We can't
Mhm.
wait till they come and sing and have some social time. And it's like create real life context around people. And if you're at home with somebody, yes, even more important to be able to do that.
Yeah, no, I love it. Okay, the last of the three, one story. Um, Share with us some insights there.
Gosh, I wrote so many stories about what people were sharing with me when I was doing the full-time caregiving work. And I would just say, okay, there she is, and there he is, when that story would pop out. One time I was doing an exercise circle with a large group of people. We were doing, movements and to music. And one fellow at the end stood up and he said, do you ever sing songs from the liturgy? He was a Christian. And I said, sure. So the next time I brought a book, a liturgy book from, just from my faith, and he was so happy, just to sing what he was familiar with, what he wanted to hear, and what brought him back to ground. So I was appreciative that he told me a story about him, and that's how I learned to sort of now let's preempt this for people. Let's help them tell their stories. So write a story. I'm doing a slideshow this afternoon for a group. As I mentioned earlier, we'll be talking about citrus, one of the 5 C's of Arizona. And one of the pictures is a picture of a breakfast mug, and there's an orange there because we have fresh oranges in December here in Arizona. And then there's a little index card. This is for a tip for the families when I see them today. The card says, you made women beautiful with the clothing you designed. And that is just a little index card at the breakfast table as an idea of something that everyone can do. Just write some little story. And we have Cheryl talking about quilts. It can be everywhere. It could be stuck on the bathroom mirror. It could be on the living room table. It could be on the dining room table. It could be in your own pocket. You have a picture of a quilt and it says, you made this quilt for your husband's, your anniversary, whatever the story is. It just is that short. Thank you for making this quilt for your family. They love this. This has made them so happy. A little prompt, a little story. So we're telling their stories that we know. The other way to do it is you're going to tell a story and see what stories come out of them. This is what I do in my sessions every week. We do some songs to sort of get up the energy and bring our hearts together, and then we turn over the page. On the other side, there are quotes about a topic, and we talked about St. Patrick's Day the other day, and we had stories about, I just wrote Irish blessings. And I said, a good laugh and a long sleep are the two best cures. Yeah, don't you think so? Yeah, I love that. Oh, I love to laugh. Oh, there's a woman in one of my classes who is a caregiver and she tells jokes. She's called the joke lady and
Hey
she
folks, it's
has a
Tryn
joke for
Seley.
every occasion. So when she tells a joke, people laugh, and then they say, "That reminds me of da 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 da," and then off we go. The whole room is talking about stories about rainbows or, Ireland or whatever. And it could be any topic of any type, holidays or summertime or autumn time. Just the stories come. And me as a provider of stories, I start with a story and you get 10 more stories sparked.
Wow. Deb says, I recently visited a skilled nursing center and there was a former Washington Redskin sitting in the lobby. It was around the time that the Commanders were in the playoffs. It would have been great if there was a little sign prompt story in his room. Thanks for sharing that, Deb. And yeah, so when we talk to people like you, Tryn, we're just envisioning that my mom is or my dad is in the skilled nursing home, and everybody is just like Tryn. The one of the things that I wanted to get your insights on is that you take this very holistic and person-centered, customized approach with the people that you interact with, but then you leave to go do another job or to go home at night, and there's another caregiver that's walking into that room. And what can we do to kind of transfer this approach to all the people that are visiting, because it's what you're doing, if implemented correctly, it's actually making my job easier. If I'm the overnight caregiver, instead of just walking into that room and filling up a cup with water or picking up, that I can actually now, I've got something that I know that can put a smile on somebody's face.
It puts a smile on everybody's face, frankly, and I love that. So, yes, what I did before I wrote books, before I was, thinking I would write a book, I just started collecting those stories about people. And again, as I said earlier, I would ask the family members if they came to visit, tell me a story about this person's life. Tell me what they love. Tell me what's important about them. I would ask the nurse, or you get in sort of an intake form, and people write maybe they need a walker or they are blind in the left eye, or those are things that are good to know, but you also really want to share the best stories of their life, the thing that makes them the most proud, the thing that makes them the most happy. And you don't have to put it in the past. If you put everything in the past tense, then nobody knows what it is. A person will forget how to play the guitar if they don't have a guitar sitting there. But if they have a guitar in their hands, I tell you, they will play. You've seen that movie with Glenn Campbell,
Oh,
I'm
it's
Still Here,
incredible.
right? Put up the teleprompter, put him in his costume, give him a guitar, off he goes. He knows how to play. He's done that. It's muscle memory now. And plenty of people have muscle memory around all the things that they love. If it's about fishing, or if it's about handicrafts, or it's about um, the things that they've done in their lives, these are the things that you can put around that person. I think there are always going to be care homes that don't know what to do, and many, many that do know what to do. And they've crafted their spaces to have interactive baskets full of the kinds of things that people love. You can put a basket of all, infant clothing, and see what they, if there's people who love to grab
Fresh
pictures of
laundry.
babies, or a cat and dog basket that has humorous sayings about cats and dogs, and even stuffed animals. And that people are learning that very much. And 15 years ago it wasn't happening. Now it is. And that's what's wonderful, to be part of this industry where you can see the needle moving, and people understanding that, yes, in fact, it does matter to bring out the best in people and give them those opportunities to interact with the kinds of materials and the things that they've always loved.
Man, I love it. Well, we really covered a lot. It was Tryn, this is the point where I always say, it's like, is there anything, any sort of rabbit hole that you want to jump down, or anything that you haven't shared? But I really think you've given me certainly a different perspective and on working with our loved ones, and I know you've made an impact on this live audience that we have here today. But anything else before we wrap up?
I love all the people that have come and shared their thoughts. Thank you. And in your experiences, it's a gift. Um, I just feel so glad to be in this industry with an excited heart about people's personalities and not seeing it as me in a room of 20 people and I'm doing all the lifting, and seeing that both family caregivers and professionals can utilize the strategies that I've written about in my books as well as what I'm sharing here. And people can certainly hire me to support them more, and I'll share my links and things. But I'm just really proud of people for seeing another person through their strengths and helping them transform from confused and lost to grounded and connected. And that makes everything better for everybody.
I love it, Tryn. And I just dropped your links in there, but it'll also be on the recording link at proaging.com. And this has been a wonderful day. I really love talking to you and introducing this concept to the community. And folks, give us feedback if you try something that Tryn talks about today. Drop me a line, drop Tryn a line, and let us know how it goes.
Wonderful. Thank
And
you so
and
much.
as a bonus, we got to hear you sing too. I didn't expect that.
Ba-ba, ba-ba, ba.
All
Okay.
right, y'all. Let's have a great day. And I again, thanks, Tryn. Thanks to everybody who participated, and we'll see you at the next one.